Men of Reddit, what is the dumbest reason someone used to label you as a creep? Before we start with the first story, please hit a subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. I followed some girls my age. They were driving and so was I. They took random turns for a while to confirm that I was following them, however they drove right to my cul-de-sac. When I stopped and they confronted me, I just opened my garage door and went inside. Kinda understandable, but if a stranger really is following you, don't stop and talk to them. Story 2. I tripped and fell on a sidewalk. When I got to my knees, a woman in a skirt was standing over me asking if I needed help. When I first looked up, I was looking at her underwear. Another woman yelled at me, "What kind of a pervert are you, looking up women's skirts like that?" The woman in the skirt came to my defense and helped me up. She told off the other woman, "Can't you see he fell? His hands are bleeding." Still, other people there gave me the hairy eyeball. The woman in the skirt insisted on helping getting my hands attended to. I was terribly embarrassed, but she wasn't bothered one bit. I was 22 at the time. I was very conscious when walking on that sidewalk after. Story 3. I had a professional quality camera. This was back before cameras were on cell phones, and was seemingly taking pictures of kids at a playground. Thankfully, it was a digital camera, and I could show the police that were called that I was taking pictures of my own son for his grandparent. Story 4. I was eating at a restaurant when I noticed that a group of my friends were also eating at the restaurant at another table. I gave a brief smile over because I tend to smile when people are hanging out or there's affection taking place in front of me. But a woman accused me for creeping on the one girl in that group of friends, as if I was trying to get that girl. I was a teenager. A simple smile and acknowledgement of being happy that other people are hanging out gets you labeled a creep. Story 5. Not creep exactly, but I got called a pedophile for approaching a lady who was trying to change her baby's nappy diaper in the closed seating area of the cafe that I worked in during COVID. Literally just walked over there to tell her she couldn't do it. By the way, in the mall I worked in, there are baby changing toilets 2 minutes from the cafe, and she proceeded to call me a pedophile and say I should be more considerate because her baby is autistic. Story 6. I worked in fighter jets. A girl came out to talk to the pilot during an engine running refuel, and she had no business being near it. Didn't know the safety zones. She walked up and looked directly into the running engine. I know there isn't enough pull to suck her up at idle, but it can suck the pens out of her arm pen holder for sure, so I ran up, grabbed her by the jacket on her shoulders and threw her behind me. She absolutely flew and fell on her face. I saved her from wrecking a multi-million-dollar engine at best, her life at worst, all because she was flirting with the fucking pilot. How do I know? I had a 3-sided comm cord and heard the whole fucking thing. She called me a creep for it and tried to get me in trouble. Story 7. I got called out as a creep because I walked with my dog near a kindergarten. I was just out walking with the dog and the kids ran to the gate. They couldn't get out to me and the dog, and wanted to pet my dog through the fence. My dog loves kids, so I let them. After a few minutes, one of the teachers, or what they are called, came and told the kids to get away and told me that it was inappropriate and creepish behavior. Since then, I never go near kids or kindergartens. Story 8. I mentioned to a lady that I used to stop and sit for a bit by this one park when I would go for walks. There were some slides and swings on the other side of the park, so she decided I was a creepy pedo. I had already said that I went for walks late, like 11 p.m. or even later. So because I sometimes sat on a bench 200 feet from a swing, hours after anyone had finished using it, and outside the fence and facing away from it anyhow, she said she would call the cops on me if she ever saw me do that. Okie dokie. Story 9. So I used to have this canvas in the back seat of my car that was designed so my dog could ride with me and not slip down on the floor, and it would also wrangle her hair and help keep it from going everywhere. I went on a date with a girl that I'd already met, and when she saw the canvas in the back of my car, she refused to get in because she thought I was trying to murder her and use that to wrap up her body. I just said, okay, sorry for making you feel that way. I assure you I wasn't ever going to try and murder you. And then I never pursued her romantically again. Story 10. I once helped a girl take off her wetsuit when I was 15. She asked since she wasn't able to fix it herself and she was freezing. Next thing I know, around 15 girls from around 14 years old are calling me creep. I was stuck with them for a whole week, being the only guy in that group. So yeah, that was a great experience at sailing camp. Did a great job to my self-esteem for the next 6 years. They treated me like crap for the whole week while I did nothing wrong. Story 11. Man 40. Was leaning on a tree at a park and was kind of zoned out while listening to my SEC study group. A couple of, I assume 20-year-olds, walked by and then glanced back at me. One of them turned around and started walking towards me. That's when I noticed her. She finally just comes out with, "At least you aren't trying to take a picture. Pervert." I fire back with, "Fuck off, child. I'm listening to a podcast. F you, creep." Then she stormed off, so that was odd. Story 12. I took my younger brother to a trampoline park. I'm in my 20s and he's 8. He accidentally jumped near one of the younger kids and they started crying. This kid's mother was nowhere near him, and I went over to ask if he needed any help, if he was okay and where his parents' guardian was. He was very distraught and didn't answer, but when his mom finally did show up, she gave me this look that just screamed, "Get away from my child," and snapped at me saying I can handle it. Mind you, she didn't show up for at least a minute while this kid was screaming, and I was trying to find who this kid's guardian. I totally understand stranger danger as a young child and being careful, and I know parents can be protective of their children. However, I was leaning down next to him with my younger brother with me, making sure he was okay. If I was a woman, this probably would have gone differently. It is what it is, I guess. Story 13. I was a professional touring musician. I was on a flight, which I often was, and this maybe 9 or 10-year-old girl was in the seat next to me flying alone, and she had a violin. She initiated a conversation with me because she saw me put my guitar in the overhead. She asked me what kind of guitar and what I played, etc. We had a nice conversation about composers we like, and she was telling me about a piece she was composing herself. Really cool. This goes on for about 10 minutes, and the flight attendant comes by and tells the girl if she wants, she can sit up front in first class. The kid actually looked at me like, "What do I do?" I was like, "Wow, that's awesome, go." Now keep in mind, I'm not a long hair, freaky looking music type. I'm totally clean cut and normal. Anyway, a few min later, another flight attendant goes over, and I hear her ask the one that moved the girl why, and I heard her say she didn't feel comfortable with that man. I was really hurt. I mean, I get it. People are nuts and you never know, but it really bothered me. Story 14. I once got home at about 3 a.m. and parked my car in my parking spot about 2 blocks from my apartment. I was walking home, alone on the street except for one girl who was ahead of me on the sidewalk. I guess she felt uncomfortable, so she started running, but she was a slow runner. I kept walking at the same speed, which was not particularly fast. Apparently, we were neighbors because she ran all the way to my apartment building and ran inside, slamming the door to the elevator room behind her. I felt kind of bad. I decided to take the stairs. I lived on the 2nd floor anyway. Turns out we lived on the same floor, and the elevator opened up right as I was walking out of the stairwell. Did my best not to make eye contact and walked away from her to my apartment. She was clearly panicking though. Always wondered what I should have done different. I feel like if I had called out to her to let her know I wasn't a rapist, that wouldn't have helped. Story 15. A new coworker, new at the time this happened, this was like 6 years ago now, was telling me that she would love to meet a guy like me, then asked if I wanted to see her after work that night. I told her yes, and she was shocked and then told me that she had plans to babysit that night. She told our boss that she didn't feel comfortable working with me anymore and that I kept asking her out. She transferred the next day, and I had to meet with my boss and my boss's boss to explain it. They'd known me for a long time and seemed to believe what I told them, but it was still an incredibly uncomfortable and honestly frightening scenario that could have easily spun out of control against me. So not exactly the question asked, because the label didn't seem to stick, but it still really threw me off and made me really anxious for a long time. That kind of thing freaks me out so much, that people can just create situations that could potentially cause a lot of harm over seemingly nothing. So, in a way, labeled a creep for saying yes to a woman asking me out. Alright folks, that's a wrap. If you like more of this, please hit a like button and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your thoughts in the comment below. I'll see you in the next video.